I just wanted to say one more word about Quibido. This was a most amazing situation because the FEMA guy was a very tall guy, and he was explaining that they wanted to develop grids and they had to take time, and everybody had traveled there and was anxious to do something, and the FEMA guy was explaining this, and Quibido had some army fatigues on, and of course his name, Quibido, and he had one of these bladders on his back that you could suck water out of. And the guy was decked out, you know, and very forthright in terms of saying, look, we have tremendous assets here, we want to be doing something, and obviously, as you saw from the video, I mean, he was actually commanding the thing all of a sudden. But later in the day, my son and I started fantasizing that maybe Quibido never really existed, and that he was actually a phantom of some kind that intervened in this situation, because the guy, I'm telling you, he said, we have to report to the secretary, we've got to get documents, we've got to write this down, we've got to do this stuff, and everybody was feeling the same sentiment that Quibido was feeling, like, look, dude, we're ready to rock here, you know, and it was just so funny. And then the last time I said, Matt, did you ever see Quibido again? And he said, yeah, when I was going to get the trailer, I saw him running down the interstate. You know, I don't know where he was going or anything, but that's the last we saw of him. But I'd love to know more about that guy. But he certainly took charge and put the FEMA guy kind of like, well, okay, you know, go ahead. Do your thing. So that was pretty fun. So like I said, there were elements of it that we actually appreciated, and like I said, I worked as a waiter at Blenfant's restaurant on Canal Boulevard, which was right on the other side of that railroad track that you saw, and just to be in that area and see the water and at that depth on Canal Boulevard. One of the things that people do in New Orleans when it's going to be a heavy rainstorm, they all pull their cars up on the neutral ground because that gives them an extra foot of, and it was so woefully inadequate for this project. So all of these cars were on the neutral ground, but all of them were, underwater. And so it was really something. And like I say, communication, no cell phones. I mean, cell phones were zeroed out. There was no communication going on whatsoever, and that was critical.
One of the things that you talked about was the quietness after a storm, the peacefulness. It's eerily quiet. I've been up to St. Louis in the floods of '93, and then gone down to the coast post Rita and post Ike, and everything's quiet. And then you just see bizarre things that you never thought you'd ever see in your lifetime. Seeing cows stuck in mud up to their neck, and they're still alive. It's like, oh my gosh, how do you dislodge this cow out of this? And alligators crossing the road and fish flopping all over the place. It's very interesting. And it's also very dangerous. I mean, I can't imagine going water-wise. I was always worried that I was going to puncture the tires on my vehicle, and I'm driving on dry land.
Well, in Vietnam, the rice paddies and the berms that surrounded them became default pickup zones where helicopters could come down, and it was the high ground. And it was a similar situation with these railroad tracks, because people were making their way to that. And the reason that I emphasize that my boat has an 88-inch beam on it is because it's extremely stable, and we were able to put people in the boat with wheelchairs and a huge deck in the front, which made a big difference in terms of accommodating a lot of people. And then also, because the railroad track was up here and you could only pull up to here, there were a bunch of paramedics who were sort of just almost jumping with people down onto the boat, So those high ground pickup points were kind of interesting to discover that that's where people were.
Those railroad tracks, just about in every community. The railroad, they first came in, they took the high ground, so you can always count on that. But here locally, I was astounded when we had Rita and the water was going over the railroad tracks in Delta and Erath, and in Erath it was 5 feet over the tracks. So obviously things have changed over time.
When you and Matthew went down to as part of the Cajun Flotilla, were you guys like renegade, or were you with a group of other people in boats?
Well, what happened was, like I said, everyone assembled at the Acadiana Mall. Lots and lots of boats. People responded tremendously. But as we started heading for New Orleans, one thing that you noticed was that people had not been in their boats or run their trailers or hooked their boats up for a long time prior to that. So en route to Baton Rouge and on to New Orleans, there were probably 50 boats pulled onto the side with flat tires and boats that were on the trailer kind of, you know, cattywampus, you know, on it. But they were going to go and do their thing. Now the flotilla concept was I mean, I don't know that we coined that, but when the Sheriff's Department said, "Who are you?" we called ourselves the Lafayette Cajun Flotilla to give it a certain je ne sais quoi.
Legitimacy, perhaps?
Legitimacy. And then we were not inspired tremendously by the fact that a DARE officer was going to do the negotiation process. And we knew that when he came back, he was going to stand on the hood of his cruiser and say, "Nobody can go in." You know, we just sensed that, you know. And when he said that, the sheriff and everybody who was there, they left. They said, "Well, we can't go in, can't go in." You know. But we had come a long way, and we really wanted to do something, and I was confident that we could get in somehow. But it did involve ignoring quite a few mandates not to do it. You know.
How many other people with boats got in?
Well, it was hard to say, because of the group that left Lafayette, like I say, many of them turned around. Once we separated from them, I'm not sure who we were involved with, but once we got in the water, it's hard to tell where anybody was from. Right. But there were not an overabundance of boats out there, and we ran everywhere. And I busted up my boat, you know, I ran into stuff, and but I thought if it was going to be dinged up, what better way to ding up your boat, you know, than in New Orleans. So, but I'm really not sure how many made it in, but a lot of people, I know a guy who went there with his trailer loaded with ice and provisions and everything to bring down there. Police told him to turn around. He said, "I've got all of this stuff for people." He said, "We don't care. Go back with it." "Can't you take it?" "No, can't do it."
Some other people had similar stories, and I know one was David Perillo from T-Cruise, but he did the same thing you did.
Yeah.
He kept getting turned away, but he got away.
Yeah, you kind of find a way.
He rescued several people in the same area where you were.
Yeah, and one of his good friends, Kenny Begno, who's a friend of mine, is the guy with all the ice. He didn't get in that day, but he went down the next day, and instead of going Interstate 10, he went downtown. He ended up going by the convention center and getting in the water over there. So, and they saw some more horrific sights down there than we did.